In a rushing crowd, the one in control is never the loudest voice. It is always the quietest, the one who withdraws not out of weakness, but to observe, calculate, and save the final bullet for the decisive moment. We live in an era obsessed with attention, where we are programmed to believe that we must constantly flaunt, speak up to prove our existence, and expose every intention just to trade for a few superficial nods. But the more you obsess over explaining yourself, the more you lose your edge. The louder you are, the easier you lose the cards that truly decide the game. Silence is not a refuge for passivity or avoidance. It is a cold, sharp strategy, the pinnacle of self-mastery, mastering emotions, mastering impulses, and absolutely preserving one's vital energy. When you no longer feel the need to reach out and dominate the space around you, it sends a powerful signal. You have begun to master yourself. The journey of shedding the noisy exterior to build internal strength is not easy, and it is certainly not for the masses. If you value philosophies that cut through illusions to build a solid self from within, continue this path with Stoic Journey. A subscription, a like, or a share is more than just a connection. It is a sign that this message has found its mark. Share your perspective in the comments so that quiet minds may recognize one another on this Stoic path. A person who knows when to withhold their words isn't hiding anything. They are sharpening their mind. Every drop of energy, instead of leaking through meaningless justifications, is now condensed into a presence of immense weight. But the boundary between remaining silent to nurture a resurgence and gritting your teeth out of cowardice is hauntingly thin. Are you quietly building an empire, or simply trembling before judgmental eyes? The force that shapes true power behind that quiet exterior is far more ruthless and profound than we often imagine. Part 1. True power is never loud. Step into any stifling atmosphere, whether a negotiation or a moment of crisis, and you will soon recognize a ruthless law. Those who scatter the most words are often those hiding the deepest insecurities. They fill the silence with noise, desperate for validation, trying to cloak themselves in an aura of authority and composure. But true power, the kind that can shift the entire landscape, has never operated that way. It does not lie in who speaks more, but in the weight of restraint. The one who holds the board rarely rushes to interrupt or leaps to claim the spotlight. They take a step back, choosing the position of the observer, still as a glass lake, to gather scattered fragments of information and read the invisible shifts within their opponent. This silence is not empty. It creates a silent pressure, forcing others to be wary, to reflect upon themselves even before you utter a single word. It is not a mystery, let alone a performance. It is the result of equanimity, when a person is strong enough to hold back their first reaction to choose the right one. The world often mistakes noise for value, but most noise is simply a form of energy leakage. Every time you rush to justify, explain, or dive into an argument just to soothe a bruised ego, you are blunting your sharpest weapon. Conversely, when you know how to rein in your words and refuse to react instinctively, you send a clear signal. This person does not need to control the external space, for they have already mastered the world within. To forge that power, you must begin with the art of the pause. Next time you are attacked or pushed into a situation beyond your control, do not rush to respond with a survival reflex. Take a step back for a single breath. Do not react immediately. Do not explain immediately. That very pause will sever the thread between impulse and character. The urge to speak will be intense, but if you can hold it, you will realize that the one who becomes confused first is usually not you. To remain still in the eye of the storm is the moment you stop being a victim of circumstance and begin to step into the role of the game shaper. Part 2. Energy leakage and the trap of oversharing. But maintaining stillness in a tense moment is only the beginning. A more silent, more dangerous challenge lies in whether you are conscious enough not to leak your own power through redundant words. The most ruthless trap often comes not from an opponent, but from your own mouth. We grow up in a culture that idolizes exposure, where people are encouraged to constantly share, to announce every grand intention as if it were proof of their competence and worth. But the cold truth is, every confession made just to satisfy the ego, every redundant explanation to ease the fear of being forgotten, opens small cracks through which your vitality silently drains. Energy that should have been channeled into action is instead consumed by the sensation of being recognized. This erosion is so subtle that it even deceives the nervous system. The moment you excitedly talk about an unfinished plan or a goal that hasn't yet taken shape, your brain begins to grant you a sense of satisfaction, as if a part of the victory has already occurred. You haven't truly moved yet, but internally, a vague feeling emerges that you are nearing the finish line. Praise that comes too early, easy nods, superficial congratulations, all of these create a false reward. And it is this false reward that dampens the fire of action. This is why many people talk brilliantly about their new journey and gain immense attention, only for everything to sink into silence weeks later. It's not necessarily that they lacked talent, but that they spent the feeling of victory before the reality had even begun. A young idea is like a seedling, just peeking through the soil. If it is exposed to scrutinizing eyes, cheers, or doubts before it has even taken root, it is likely to wither before it can grow. Similarly, words are the expensive currency of the inner life. Every time you speak mindlessly, you are not just voicing a thought. You are cutting away a piece of your focus, your heat, and the compression that should have been reserved for action. Therefore, the way to end this erosion is sometimes ruthless but necessary. Notify less, explain less, display less. Let important seeds grow in their necessary darkness. When you no longer feel the need to narrate your every step, your focus will begin to condense and your internal energy will become far sharper. Yet the moment you decide to withhold your words and enter that silence, a different pressure will emerge. Without the early applause, without the feeling of being seen, without the feedback that makes the ego comfortable, you will begin to face a very real void. And it is there that a harder question arises. Is this silence a sign of character, or just another form of fear? For not every muteness is strength. Sometimes, hidden behind that reserve is not depth, but a cowardice skillfully camouflaged as strategy. Part 3. The clear distinction. Strategic silence versus passive avoidance. Between the silence of character and the muteness of fear, there exists a razor-thin line, yet it is enough to define a person's entire essence. Many who are weak attempt to cloak their cowardice in a facade of composure. They remain silent not because they have mastered their inner world, but because they fear conflict, fear judgment, and fear the responsibility of their own voice. This kind of silence creates no depth. It only leaves a sense of suffocation, frustration, and fragility. In contrast, the stillness of a strategist is never a passive state. It is an active, conscious, and fully controlled choice. The person who is silent in strength does not retreat from life. They simply refuse to deplete themselves in meaningless reactions. They possess the fortitude to keep an idea within, continuing to lay each brick of their own fortress without needing to survive on the applause of others. This silence is not a void. It is a form of concentration compressed to its ultimate limit. It is energy that no longer leaks through explanations, arguments, or displays, but is instead channeled entirely into observation, timing, and precise action. In a boardroom filled with egos fighting for dominance, or in a confrontation where a single wrong decision could tilt the entire outcome, the master of stillness presence is profoundly different. They do not rush to show their hand. They do not hurry to prove themselves. They do not allow fleeting emotions to drag them into someone else's rhythm. They slow down to see the entire board, reading the movements behind the words and calculating consequences that the impulsive will never see. While others react to release pressure, they hold their energy to deliver the exact move. And often, that very composure is what turns the tide. To reach this state, you must learn to break the habit of projecting your energy outward. As long as you live for the gaze of the crowd, needing feedback to know your worth, you have not yet truly mastered your inner life. Strategic withdrawal is not turning your back on the world. It is a pivot back to your own center, where you stop reacting like a puppet on a string and start acting from a distilled internal power. From there, every choice becomes less noisy but clearer, less flamboyant but carrying immense weight. Yet the moment you block out the noise of the crowd, a different sound begins to rise. It does not come from outsiders. It needs no audience. It appears in the quietest moments when there is no one left to blame or cling to. And it is then that the most indomitable enemy reveals itself. The voice inside your head. Part 4. Facing and conquering. Internal noise. The most terrifying noise does not echo from the outside world. It gnaws at you from within your own mind. Just as you close the door on the noisy crowd, the inner critic begins to speak. It doesn't scream. It whispers in a tone that sounds very logical, very cautious, very much like sanity. What if it all collapses? That is precisely why it is dangerous. Carl Jung once warned that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Internal noise operates the same way. It never identifies itself as fear. It wears the mask of reason, of caution, of safety. But at its deepest level, its essence remains the fear of stepping into your own true power. Almost everyone has experienced that moment, sitting alone in the middle of the night, facing a decision that could shift the course of a lifetime, only to be suddenly submerged by a flood of reasons to delay. You want to stand up and do what is necessary, but your mind opens countless trapdoors for escape. You pick up your phone, scrolling mindlessly, seeking anything loud enough so you don't have to sit still with yourself. This is how doubt wins. So much potential does not die at the hands of circumstance. It dies in the silent arguments inside a person's head. Staying silent before the crowd is only the first lesson. Deeper discipline lies in whether you can stop being dragged away by the voices in your own mind. To overcome that realm of chaos, you cannot win by shouting louder than the noise in your head. The only way is to look directly at it in stillness. Plato said that the first and greatest victory is to conquer oneself. This does not mean destroying emotions or becoming a soulless machine. It means being steady enough to sit still amidst insecurity without immediately running from it. No seeking digital sedatives, no rushing to fill the void with sound, distraction, or excuses. When you are strong enough to stay with that discomfort, the internal noise gradually loses its power, and beneath the layer of fear, another sound begins to emerge. Filtered intuition, the deepest, most lucid part of you that knows exactly what the next necessary step is. The most important truths rarely arrive in clamor. They only appear when the mind is quiet enough to recognize them. And when a person has learned to walk through their own internal noise, they step out into the world with a completely different aura. They are no longer easily manipulated by pressure, no longer hasty in the face of provocation, and no longer afraid of the silences in conversation. For once you are no longer controlled by your own mind, you begin to see more clearly the fluctuations, the insecurities, and the disguises in others. Stillness, then, is no longer just a defense. It becomes a form of clairvoyance. And that is when you do not just master yourself, you begin to read the entire board before you. Part 5. The Art of Silence in Leadership and Negotiation. Once you have learned to master the noise within, that stillness does not just protect you from internal chaos. It becomes a distinct advantage in spaces of power. In both leadership and negotiation, the person of true influence is rarely the one who speaks the most. They do not need volume to impose their presence, nor do they fight for the last word to prove their status. What draws others to them is not flamboyance, but the sense of unshakable stability radiating from an interior that is not easily disturbed. Some need only to enter a room, sit down, listen, and speak very little, yet the entire space automatically shifts to their rhythm. This is not the effect of surface-level power, but the result of a mind trained to be clear enough, deep enough, and calm enough not to be swept away by the egos of others. In a tense negotiation, the most common mistake is rushing to fill the void. Those lacking character often fear silence, mistakenly believing that if they don't speak immediately, they lose the initiative. But that very fear causes them to reveal too much. Truly sharp individuals operate differently. They do not rush to dominate with long-winded explanations. They listen to the end of the sentence, observe the facial expressions, the breath, the choice of words, and even the hesitations that others ignore. Then they leave a beat of silence. It is in that silence that the real data begins to emerge. Because most people cannot endure prolonged silence. To release the pressure, they will speak more, explain more, correct themselves, or inadvertently reveal things that should have remained hidden. You don't need to attack early. Often, simply being composed enough not to interrupt forces the opponent to expose the true internal structure of their own argument. This is why silence, when used correctly, becomes a potent leadership tool. A mature leader does not react instantly just to prove they are in control. They create space for others to fully express their thoughts, for the problem to reveal its own shape, and only then do they deliver words that have been carefully distilled. At that moment, every sentence they speak carries weight. It is not much, but it is enough to direct the room. It is not loud, but it is enough for everyone else to recalibrate themselves. Silence here is not a cheap manipulation. It is the manifestation of a mind that knows how to restrain impulse and prioritizes clarity over the fleeting sensation of an immediate win. The more impulsive a leader is, the more easily the boardroom turns into a battlefield of egos. Only a leader who is still enough can turn it into a place where the essence of the problem is seen. The same applies to negotiation. Power does not lie in forcing others to be quiet, but in being calm enough not to exhaust yourself fighting for the upper hand in every word. When the time is not yet ripe, you listen. When information is insufficient, you observe. While the opponent is still showing off, you do not rush to strike. And when the opportunity appears, you only need a few words, focused, clear, and forceful, instead of 10 redundant ones to mask insecurity. That is the true effectiveness of stillness, not to appear mysterious, but to see deeper, read more accurately, and act more timely. In the hands of the weak, silence is a void. but in the hands of a master of self, silence becomes leverage. Part 6. The power of subtraction and building a legacy. To answer the question at the end of the previous part, we are forced to face a great paradox of this era. Humanity is obsessed with addition. Everyone is pushed to do more, appear more, seize more, and possess more, as if the value of a life is measured by the quantity of things they can cram into their schedule. But it is there that the power of stillness opens an opposite path, the path of subtraction. Not adding everything, but being conscious enough to discard what does not serve the core essence. In a world stifled by an excess of choices, the one with the true advantage is often not the one who holds the most, but the one who dares to let go of the most, to keep their energy unfragmented. So many live in a state of perpetual busyness but never actually move forward. They show up everywhere, dive into every relationship, pursue too many directions at once, and then reassure themselves that they are in constant motion. But motion is not always progress. There are lives that create a great deal of noise yet never touch any depth. Conversely, those who understand the art of subtraction know that every timely no is an act of protecting vital energy for what truly matters. Saying no to hollow entertainment, superficial relationships, or flashy opportunities that deviate from your axis of life is not a loss. It is how you clear the ground so that a real monument can take shape. This is where the boundary between fame and legacy becomes clear. Fame needs noise to survive. It lives off the gaze of the crowd, the constant mention of a name, and the sensation of being noticed in the present. But legacy does not operate that way. A legacy is not built in moments of display, but through years of quietly repeating the right thing until it gains weight. Aristotle once said that excellence is not a single act, but a habit. A work of lasting value is not born from a momentary impulse, but from the ability to sit with the core, doing it over and over, refining it again and again, and accepting living long enough in silence so that what you create has the chance to take root. Those chasing fame often want results instantly. Those building a legacy understand that what is most durable always grows the slowest. Therefore, stillness at its deepest level is no longer just a tool for self-protection or gaining an advantage in short-term clashes. It becomes the environment in which you distill your life. Every time you remove something meaningless, you return space to something more meaningful. Every time you refuse a distraction, you dig deeper into the work you were truly born to do. And gradually, what you resolutely eliminate will define the stature of what remains. That is why subtraction does not impoverish life. On the contrary, it makes everything clearer, deeper, and heavier with purpose. Part 7. Let the results speak. The final answer always lies in a cold truth. Supreme power never begs for attention. It forces others to look through undeniable results. In a world where too many try to win recognition through words, declarations, and constant displays, those who truly hold the board choose a completely opposite path. They stop explaining. They no longer feel the need to justify every step, nor do they deplete themselves by explaining choices that the crowd is not yet at the level to understand. Plato suggested a profound distinction. The one who has something worth saying speaks for the sake of truth, while the one who speaks too much often does so just to fill the pressure to make sound. And the more you mature, the more you realize that not every speaking out is power. Very often, true strength lies in being able to remain silent long enough to turn what you believe into a tangible reality. That is the moment you step into a different game. A game that no longer operates on the urgency of being recognized, but on the ability to accumulate in silence. All the energy that once leaked through explanations, arguments, justifications, or displays is now compressed into action. You no longer need to paint a picture for others of who you will become. You devote your entire vitality to building it. While many are still preoccupied talking about their glorious visions, you patiently lay each brick in the darkness, repeating the right things, even when no one sees, no one applauds, and sometimes no one believes. It is there that character is formed, not during the cheers, but during the long stretches where there is no applause at all. Eventually, the results will do the work that words never could. It stands as its own witness. It creates its own weight. It forces others to recalibrate how they see you. This is why results always carry a weight entirely different from words. Words can impress for a moment, but results are what shape reality. You don't need to win every small argument if your life is gradually becoming the ultimate answer. You don't need to go around convincing everyone if what you have created is clear enough to speak for itself. The more solid a person is, the less they need to defend. For instead of trying to control the perceptions of others, they focus on building something that cannot be erased by a few words of judgment. The deepest waters are always the quietest. Their surfaces do not scream or show off, but it is the depth that determines the weight. Humanity is the same. The final test of character does not lie in how loudly you can speak, but in whether you have enough patience, enough discipline, and enough confidence to let time verify what you are building. No extra painting, no asking anyone to believe beforehand, no erecting an image larger than your actual substance. Just quietly work until the result itself becomes irrefutable evidence. So the final question is no longer what others think of you, but this. From this moment, do you dare to cut off the need to constantly explain, constantly prove, and constantly be seen? Do you dare to lock away easy promises, step into discipline, accept the silence, and let your actions speak for everything? Do you dare to be the clearest signal amidst the chaos? Let stillness mold your character. Let time sharpen your ability, and let the result become the light that requires no one to be called to look, yet prevents others from looking away. In the end, that is the most durable form of power. Not loud, not begging, not flamboyant, but real enough to outlast all words. In an era where humanity is obsessed with constantly making noise, choosing to be a clear signal amidst the chaos of sound is a rare act of distinction. You don't need to strain or struggle to have the last word, because actions forged in darkness, when deep enough and real enough, possess the inherent power to silence all debate. Nature is always operated by a cold, unwavering law. The deepest waters are often the quietest. Humans are the same. Those with true inner strength never feel the need to broadcast their greatness. They use stillness to forge their character, letting what they create become their most credible language. Intentional silence, honed through discipline, is never a sign of obscurity or retreat. It is a life strategy, a way to preserve energy, keep the mind from fragmenting, and step by step, reclaim mastery over oneself. It is from this stillness that lasting monuments are built. It is here that a person stops living to be seen and begins living to create what is real. Ultimately, the value of a life is not measured by the volume one throws into the world, but by the depth of the legacy they leave behind. If these words have resonated with a deeper level of your consciousness, your presence here at this moment is likely no coincidence. The path of shedding superficial layers, refusing cheap validation, and building a solid inner fortress is never the path of the masses. If you wish to continue this journey with Stoic Journey, please subscribe, leave a like, and share your perspective in the comments below. This is more than just support for the channel. It is a signal that in a world screaming for attention, there are still those who choose stillness to grow, to master, and to ascend to a higher plane. Let stillness sharpen your mind, and when the moment arrives, let the results speak for themselves.